Brandy Harvey leaks, Lori's reaction to Michael B. Jordan Oscar win. The night the world stood still to celebrate Michael B. Jordan was supposed to be nothing but a moment of pride, success, and victory. Cameras were flashing, people were clapping, and millions were watching as he stepped into one of the biggest moments of his career. But behind all that celebration, there was a story no one was ready for. Because while the world saw a winner on stage, somewhere far from the spotlight, Lori Harvey was quietly reacting in a way that no one expected. The more people talked about what Brandy Harvey had revealed, the clearer it became that Lori Harvey's reaction that night was nothing like what the world expected. It wasn't cold, it wasn't distant, and it definitely wasn't indifferent. According to what was quietly shared, Lori didn't react right away when Michael B. Jordan's name was announced at the Academy Awards. For a moment, she just watched, silent, still, almost like she was processing something deeper than just a public win. There was no dramatic response, no sudden emotion, just a pause. And sometimes, a pause says more than words ever could. It was said that after a few moments, she gave a small, controlled reaction. Something that looked like pride on the surface. But underneath that, there was something else, something harder to explain. A mix of emotions that didn't fully show, but didn't fully hide either. Because seeing someone you once shared a real connection with reach such a powerful moment is never simple. There was a quiet line, something she reportedly said in that private space, that stayed with everyone who heard about it. "I always knew he would get here. I just didn't think I'd be watching from this side of it." It wasn't bitter. It wasn't regret in the obvious sense. It was honest. That kind of honesty that comes from looking back at something that once meant a lot and realizing it now exists in a completely different place. In that moment, it wasn't about fame, attention, or public image. It was just a person reacting to a memory that suddenly felt real again, because no matter how much time passes, some connections don't completely disappear. They just become quieter. And for Lori Harvey, this wasn't just another headline. It was a reminder of what changed, and of what could never be revisited in the same way again. At first, everything looked normal. Social media was filled with congratulations, fans were praising his journey, and headlines were calling it a well-deserved win. But then, something unusual started to circulate. A private reaction. A moment that was never meant to be seen by the public. And somehow, it found its way out. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. And that's what made it powerful. According to what was later revealed by Brandy Harvey, the reaction people thought they understood was actually very different from what truly happened. Because behind that calm and confident image Lori always shows, there was a mix of emotions no one could have guessed. This wasn't just about an award. This wasn't just about success. This was about history, about love that once felt unbreakable, about two people who were once seen as perfect, now watching each other from completely different places in life. And as more details began to come out, one question slowly started to take over the conversation. Did Lori Harvey really move on? Or was this moment a reminder of something she never fully let go? The night of the Academy Awards had all the energy of something unforgettable. The atmosphere was filled with excitement, cameras, and quiet competition. Every face in the room carried a story, but that night, one name was slowly becoming the center of attention: Michael B. Jordan. As he arrived, there was a noticeable shift in the energy around him. It wasn't loud or forced, but it was there. The kind of presence that comes from years of hard work finally being recognized. Every step he took on that red carpet felt calm, controlled, and focused. People could tell this wasn't just another appearance. This moment meant something. Interviews, flashes, short smiles, everything looked polished on the outside. But underneath that calm image, there was a deeper story building. Because moments like these don't just highlight success, they bring back everything it took to get there. And while the world was watching him move closer to one of the biggest milestones of his career, there were also people watching from a distance. People who once shared a part of that journey. Somewhere away from the noise, Lori Harvey was also aware of what was happening. Maybe not in the same spotlight, but definitely in the same moment. Because when someone you once cared about reaches a peak like this, it doesn't go unnoticed. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. Moments like these have a way of bringing old memories back without warning. The closer the night moved toward its biggest announcement, the stronger that feeling became. There was tension in the air, not just in the room, but far beyond it. Because this wasn't just about who would win. This was about what that win would mean, and who it would quietly affect. And as the final category approached, one thing became clear. No matter what happened next, this night was about to reopen a story that people thought had already ended. As the final category of the night approached at the Academy Awards, the entire room seemed to slow down. Conversations faded, smiles turned into quiet focus, and all eyes shifted toward the stage. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The nominees were announced one by one, each name carrying its own weight. But when Michael B. Jordan's name was read, there was a noticeable reaction in the room. A mix of respect, anticipation, and a quiet belief that this could finally be his moment. Then came the pause, that brief silence before everything changes. And when the envelope was opened, his name was called. For a second, it didn't even feel real. The crowd rose to their feet, applause filled the room, and cameras rushed to capture every angle. Michael sat still for a moment, almost like he was taking it all in, before finally standing up. There was no rush in his movement, just a calm, emotional acceptance of everything he had worked for. As he walked toward the stage, you could see it in his face. This wasn't just a win. This was years of effort, patience, and quiet struggles finally being recognized. When he reached the microphone, the room settled again. His speech wasn't loud or overly dramatic. It was simple, honest, and real. He spoke about growth, about learning through difficult moments, about becoming stronger even when things didn't go the way he expected. There was a slight pause in his words at one point, almost like he was thinking about something deeper, something personal. And that's when people started to wonder, because sometimes the things left unsaid speak the loudest. For those who had followed his journey closely, it felt like there was more behind his words, like his success wasn't just about his career, but also about everything he had been through in his personal life. And somewhere, watching this moment unfold, was Lori Harvey. Hearing those words, seeing that moment, and maybe understanding it in a way no one else could. Because while the world saw a victory on stage, for her, it might have felt like something much more complicated. For a while, it seemed like the night would end just the way people expected. Michael B. Jordan had his moment, the internet was celebrating, and everything felt complete. But sometimes, the real story doesn't begin on stage, it begins after the spotlight fades. Not long after the Academy Awards ended, a different kind of conversation started to take shape. It wasn't coming from media outlets or official interviews, it was quieter than that, more personal. And that's when Brandy Harvey's name unexpectedly entered the picture. At first, it didn't seem like much. Just a small mention, something easy to ignore. But then, details started to surface. Hints about a private moment, a reaction that was never meant to be shared publicly. According to what began circulating, Brandy had indirectly revealed something about Lori Harvey's reaction on that same night. Not in a dramatic or attention-seeking way, but in a way that felt almost accidental, like something that slipped out without realizing how much it would matter. It wasn't a full statement, it wasn't a clear explanation, it was just enough to make people pause, because the way it was described didn't match the image Lori had been showing to the world. The calm, unbothered presence, the idea that she had completely moved on. This was different. This hinted at something more emotional, more real. And once that small piece of information got out, it didn't stay small for long. People started connecting it to Michael's speech, to the timing, to everything that had happened between them before. Suddenly, the focus shifted. It was no longer just about an Oscar win. It became about what was happening behind the scenes, in a moment that was never supposed to be public. And the biggest question now wasn't about what Brandy said, it was about what Lori actually felt. That night created a space where past and present quietly collided. On one side, there was the life she had built after the breakup, the independence, the growth, the decision to move forward without looking back. And on the other side, there were memories that didn't just disappear with time. Seeing Michael B. Jordan standing on that stage, hearing the way he spoke about his journey, it brought back something familiar. Not in a way that changed her decisions, but in a way that reminded her of what that connection once felt like. And that's where the real conflict existed. It wasn't about wanting to go back. It wasn't about regret in a simple sense. It was about understanding that two things can be true at the same time. You can move on and still feel something. You can be at peace and still remember what mattered. For Lori, this moment wasn't loud or overwhelming. It was quiet, personal, almost unspoken, a kind of reflection that didn't need to be shared to be real. Because the hardest part about closing a chapter isn't the ending itself, it's the moments later in life that remind you why that chapter meant something in the first place. And as everything settled, one thing became clear. Whatever she felt that night, it wasn't weakness. It was just human.